Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow good stories. Returning to the castle, Chloe was recovering in bed with the care of servants and doctors. Fortunately, the Lord arrived in time to rescue her. If he had been a little later, it would have been difficult to know what would have become of Chloe's life. She was contemplative when recalling that moment. The carriage suddenly tipping over couldn't have been an accident. Someone must have deliberately pushed it. It's not hard to guess who was behind this. Margaret held onto the blanket tightly, saying it was everything. All the guests had departed, leaving only Lady Isabella's maid. Did you answer honestly? Yes, sir. The countess fainted. When she saw the lady unconscious, she asked, "Where is she? Where is Lady Isabella?" She coldly replied, "There is nothing serious. I just want to talk to her. I just want to talk to her in the Duke's private room." Finally, "I have a moment to speak to you." Isabella reproachedly. Damien replied, "Yes, I will grant you this opportunity to speak, so go on." It is just as I expected. Prince Johannes's illness is growing more serious, and it seems the king senses that a rebellion is imminent. His Majesty threatened to take your life if you didn't bring him to Swan. What do you think about hiding in a mansion in Wynn? I'll tell the Emperor that you disappeared on your way to Swan. I'm gliding towards you. I'll help you, Damien. Don't worry, I'm on your side, Damien. Isabella gently stroked his face. I hope you don't think I will actually listen to you and go to Wynn. Your skin is cold and pale, just like every time you lie. Damien gently stroked Isabella's face. I hope you don't think I will actually listen to you and go to Wynn. Your skin is cold and pale, just like every time you lie. She seemed terrified, her eyes wide open, unable to believe what she was hearing. It seems like there will be a group of assassins waiting for me in Wynn. If I fell into that trap, I must be insane, Damien said. Damien, whatever you mean, don't pretend. You're just lowering yourself. Do you think I have forgotten your betrayal and your cooperation with the Emperor? The green tea bitch trembled in fear at the Duke's revelation. There will be no negotiations between us. You have nowhere else to go now, Isabella. If you can't take me to Wynn, the Emperor will eliminate you. This is entirely your fault, the green tea bitch shouted. If you hadn't abandoned me after our marriage, I wouldn't have had any reason to betray you. Damien was completely out of patience with her. He cast a disdainful look at her and sarcastically remarked, "Isn't it strange how I could have abandoned you if I never considered you as mine in the first place? Abandoning you? That sounds ridiculous. You only had to pretend to be my lover while investigating the royal family's affairs. That would have been impossible if you weren't the late queen's maid. Besides, I have compensated you for the work you did. So, what kind of relationship do we have now?" Isabella knelt down, trembling and begging, If I go back to the king, he will kill me. Please, Damien, don't abandon me," he coldly replied, as if pouring cold water over her. Oh, poor Isabella. You instigated the person who killed my wife, and now you hope to live? You think I don't know? She recoiled in horror. No, it wasn't me. I wasn't near the Duchess when it happened. Isabella, don't make me angrier with those foolish words. Her face twisted like an abandoned dog. Cornered and desperate, she clung to the last straw to survive. She hugged the Duke from behind and shouted, I love you, Damien. Help me. Save me, Damien. Don't leave me. Everything I did was out of love for you, Isabella pleaded, trembling. He coldly sighed. It's too late, Isabella. Now, get out of my sight. Outside the room, Chloe accidentally overheard Isabella's desperate cries. Please, Damien. I love you. I love you. Chloe immediately left, saying, Margaret, let's go back to my room. Damien heard the noise outside the door and rushed out, calling, Chloe, are you awake? The doctor said you needed rest. Why are you here? Chloe tried to appear cheerful. I just wanted to meet the Duchess and apologize for causing that commotion. Damien sighed. She's not in a state to see company at present. You will have to see her some other. Chloe interrupted. Since you're here, there's something I want to say. He frowned slightly. What is it? Clutching her cane tightly, Chloe firmly said, Please allow me to return to the Versier estate. Damien was utterly stunned. Why should I do that? Chloe calmly replied, This accident makes me long to see my father again. It won't take long. I'm afraid I can't agree. Why not? Damien mocked. Now you are the wife of Damien Vitus, not the daughter of Thomas Verdier. A dutiful duchess would never think of letting her husband fend for himself. Chloe clenched her hand around the cane. dutiful to my obligations? You expect me to fulfill my duties while you have an affair with your lover? The Duke paused for a second. Chloe, he said with a gleeful expression, don't tell me you're jealous. Chloe, annoyed, replied, of course not. Her expression today greatly pleased Damien. The Duke cheerfully instructed, it's late. Go rest. We'll discuss your return at another time. Maybe we'll find a way not to be separated. Now, I have some urgent matters to attend to. The door to the Duke's private room slowly closed in front of Chloe. He called out with a mocking tone, good night, my dear wife. On the icy snow, Chloe limped through the dry, gray forest. Why do I have to suffer? I entered this marriage knowing what he was like. I promised myself I wouldn't care about his private life. So what was I expecting from him? Chloe collapsed and panted. Her tears fell onto the cold snow. It seemed that only when she was alone did she dare to show her true emotions. I want to run away. I want to go home. I can't stay here for another moment. The crackling of wood in the fireplace filled the air. Chloe had run straight to Jill's cabin for comfort. Her servant was very worried about his mistress, not knowing what had happened. It's okay, Jill. Chloe forced a smile. I just feel homesick, and seeing you feels like coming home. She took a sip of tea and was surprised at how good it was. Jill, embarrassed, said, how could it compare to the first cup of tea you served me, my lady? Recalling that memory, it had been more than 10 years since Chloe and her servant first met. Back then, Jill was still a small boy, like a little puppy. You're Jules, aren't you? His cheeks turned pink when he saw the young lady in front of him. Welcome here, Chloe said. In his eyes, she looked like a fresh and beautiful angel. The tea you gave me that day was the warmest and sweetest thing I had ever tasted. I will never forget that moment. That's it, Chloe replied. Thank you for saying that, Jill. I feel better knowing that my goodwill means something to someone. The servant's heart skipped a beat. My lady. Huh? Is something wrong? He became hesitant and restless, his hands unconsciously fidgeting with the cup. The boiling water on the fireplace brought him back to reality. Jules used the excuse of needing to pour more tea to avoid the awkward situation. I wish you didn't have to suffer so much, my lady. Early the next morning, Chloe hurriedly ran back to the mansion. I can't believe I fell asleep at Jules' place. Thankfully, no one noticed. Otherwise, I would have caused a terrible misunderstanding. If the Duke finds out, Jules will face serious consequences. Suddenly, from behind, a terrified scream echoed through the mansion's hall. Chloe turned around in shock. The servant cried out in horror. There's a dead body here. In a certain room, a bottle of wine lay carelessly on the table, spilling its contents onto the floor. A woman with red hair lay motionless on the sofa. Her entire body was pale and contorted. The Marchioness Isabella is dead. The body of the Marchioness was found by a maid who had accompanied her from Swan to here. Through the investigation, we discovered a vial of arsenic in the Marchioness's room. The poison in that vial matched the type found in the Marchioness's teacup. Chloe was trembling with fear. I swear, I have never seen that vial of poison before. The investigator, writing something down on paper, coldly said, but it was found in your room. Not to mention, the witnesses all stated that you had a grudge against the Marchioness. Chloe was shocked and horrified. Who would dare say such things? Damien growled angrily. Are you implying that my wife is the murderer? The investigator nervously cleared his throat. Forgive me, sir, but I cannot reveal the identity of the witnesses for their safety. Those who have access to the Marchioness's private room, besides the Duchess, include Hermione. Chloe could only tremble, as all the evidence and testimonies were against her. My wife is incapable of harming anyone, Damien said, reaching out to firmly grasp her trembling hand. And if she were truly the culprit, she would have poisoned the tea right that night. But we were very busy during that time, weren't we, Chloe? Those words made her feel guilty as she recalled spending the night at Jules's cabin. The investigator pressed. Can you tell me where you were last night, Duchess? Chloe clutched the corner of her dress and hesitated. Well, Damien replied. I can answer for her. He kissed the back of her hand and gently spoke. My wife has been by my side all night. The investigator blushed and cleared his throat. Is that not correct, Chloe? In a small room, Chloe was under house arrest until the first trial. It's been 3 days already. Did I really wish for the Marchioness's death? I admit my feelings for her were not positive. but I never wished for her to face such a fate. My anger was not directly aimed at her. I heard you skipped your meals, Damien said, causing Chloe to quickly rise upon hearing his voice. You will starve to death if you keep this up. Chloe quietly responded, that would make it easier for the executioner to hang me. She spoke as if she wanted to give up, then turned her face away to avoid Damien. Listen. They seem to think my testimony is unreliable. They find it strange that a couple spent the whole night together, but were not together in the morning. Chloe sprang up. I didn't kill the Marchioness. Someone must have placed the arsenic in my room to frame me. The Duke was silent for a moment, then spoke. If that is true, they must have done it when you were away. Where were you that night? How on earth did you not tell the police that you spent the night at Gilles' cabin? Chloe was horrified when the Duke discovered this secret. It turned out that Jules, upon hearing that his mistress had been arrested, went to see Damien and pleaded with him repeatedly. He seemed very ready to run to the police station. I had to spend a lot of effort calming him down. Instead of using a witness to prove your innocence, I wonder why you stayed silent about him for 3 days. Chloe mumbled. No noble wants rumors about an improper relationship between his wife and a servant to spread. Is that really the reason? Are you sure it's not because you want to protect the stable master with whom you secretly spent the night? Or are you afraid that I will divorce you for your infidelity, and your family will collapse once again? Chloe insisted, I am not guilty, and I did not commit adultery. Damien casually said, then let Gilles testify so you can live, at least. Of course. You won't avoid divorce or the collapse of your family. Looking at the woman breaking down before him, Damien thought to himself, I know she has no choice. Chloe Verdier, you would never sacrifice your loved ones just to save your own life. Default text squinted and suggested, beg me, Chloe. Even if the court rejects my testimony, I can still ensure your survival. The Duke smirked to himself, thinking, do it, Chloe. Beg me for help. I am the only one who can save you. Chloe touched the firm hand holding her cheek. If you have that power, then please ensure that the execution is carried out in secret. Damien was utterly stunned by her decision and for the first time, saw her begging with tears in her eyes. That is my final request as your wife. At the trial, Damien stood before the judges to testify for his wife. He stated that on the night of the murder, he was with his wife from midnight until 6 o'clock a.m. Are you certain of your testimony? The judge asked. Damien glanced at his wife, Chloe, who seemed to have given up, awaiting the worst outcome. Remembering her tearful plea from the previous day, Damien frowned and answered, yes, that's right. The chief judge, however, did not believe his testimony. He continued questioning. How do you explain being in your study the next morning? What does that have to do with my testimony? I am saying that no one can vouch for you being with the Duchess. Are you implying that I'm lying? Damien asked angrily. That's a baseless assumption. Without witnesses, your testimony lacks credibility. Damien slammed the table and retorted fiercely. What if I said there was a witness? The entire courtroom was stunned. What do you mean? I request Gilles, the castle servant, to testify along with the Duke's words. The courtroom door opened, and Jules's figure appeared, surprising everyone. Chloe looked at Jules, unable to hide her anxiety. Damien declared loudly that Gilles could indeed testify that they were together that night. Why did you choose to remain silent until now? Damien asked Jules. Because I have committed a grave sin, Gilles replied. Upon hearing this, Chloe immediately became alarmed. Gilles wore a guilty expression. I have been observing the most private moments of Lord Damien, he confessed. Damien urged from behind, saying that won't help. Explain yourself more clearly. The servant, trembling, recounted. After a tiring day of attending to guests, I couldn't sleep and got up in the night. I heard strange noises and discovered the Duke and Duchess arguing outside. It was a typical marital quarrel caused by a misunderstanding involving the Marchioness. However, they soon reconciled and ended their disagreement. After that, they went into the barn. Unable to contain my curiosity, I committed a grave sin by witnessing their most intimate moments. The judge interrogated, you mean to tell me that you kept silent all this time just to hide a minor sin? Damien stepped up and argued, for a servant like him, even a small fault can have consequences affecting his livelihood and future. Chloe looked at the servant with unease. They must have colluded on their testimonies. Gilles lying like this will cause him serious trouble. The judge, rubbing his aching head, concluded that it was impossible to judge the case based on a servant's testimony alone, and postponed the trial for 10 days. Damien, infuriated, exclaimed, 10 days? Do you intend to throw my wife into a cold prison until then? The harsh winter has frozen your reasoning abilities, Judge. The judge, equally angered, shouted back, Duke, do not forget that I am an emissary personally appointed by His Majesty. Damien pulled something out of his coat. I had intended to deal civilly with the king's envoy, but my patience has limits. The doctor found this in the mouth of the late Marchioness. This is a button that only appears on the attire of royal servants. I asked the doctor to keep silent for the sake of the royal family. However, if the accusations against my wife continue, there will be nothing left for me to consider. Chloe was utterly astonished as the situation suddenly turned in her favor. Damien shouted, What are you all waiting for? The royal maid is the suspect. Arrest her immediately. The following day, the case concerning Isabella's death was resolved satisfactorily. That night, Gilles tossed and turned, unable to sleep, thinking about the rumors whispered among the maids. They said the king had used the Marchioness Isabella to murder Duke, but since the mission failed, he killed her to silence her. They had not yet dared to accuse Duchess of being the murderer. Oh, my, they whispered. They say Prince Jan's mental state is unstable. Perhaps that's why the royal family fears the Duke. He must know that this incident will cause conflict with the royal family, yet he did not hesitate to save the Duchess. Oh my God, isn't it so romantic? Outside, the snow falls heavily, making the night sky even colder. There was a knock on the Duke's room. Chloe entered to have a private meeting with him. Damien coldly said, I did not call you today. Chloe replied, You look very tired. My fatigue is nothing compared to yours. Don't just stand there. Come here and sit, Damien said. Chloe hesitated and suggested, It's late. Let me make you some tea to help you sleep. Damien indifferently replied, Tonight I want to drink wine, not tea. The atmosphere between the two became awkward. Only the sound of crackling wood in the fireplace echoed. Damien turned the pages of the book, but his mind was still focused on the girl in front of him. What are you thinking about so deeply? Chloe sneaked a glance at him. There is something I must tell you tonight. Damien closed the book and sighed. Is it another request to return to Verdier? I'm tired. Come back tomorrow. Chloe interrupted. Your Grace, I want to express my sincere gratitude for your help. Damien's hand holding the book suddenly paused. What do you want from me? Are you trying to flatter me to get a visit? No, Your Grace, Chloe gently replied. I simply want to thank you for protecting me, even knowing that you would offend the royal family. You did everything in your power to help me, even if it meant lying. But no one suffered, not even Jess. When you came to see me in the cell, my pride clouded my judgment. Instead of trusting you like a husband and seeking your help, I want to sincerely apologize to you. Damien softly asked, Aren't you angry that I revealed the identity of the culprit, causing you to suffer consequences? I understand that you need to maintain relationships with the royal family. I could have remained silent and pushed you to the brink, but you didn't. Instead, you created hostility with the royal family without any convincing reason, and that means a lot to me. What do you really want to say? Chloe replied, Just as you are dedicated as a husband, I am more than willing to fulfill my duties as a wife and the Duchess. Damien mocked. You mean you were only partially dedicated before? Chloe huffed. Damien. Her call made the Duke freeze because she had never called him by his first name. Can I ask why you haven't consummated this marriage with sex? The Duke sarcastically said. What a strange question to ask while expressing gratitude. Chloe remained serious. I don't think so. After all, it is the duty of a duchess to ensure the husband's lineage continues. Damien frowned. Is that the only question you have? He sighed heavily and stood up to leave. Fine, I will answer your question. I will not lower myself and use my body just to conquer a woman who always despises me. The Duke glanced at her. If that is enough to answer your question, I advise you to return to your room. Chloe was rejected by the Duke, but her heart was inexplicably fluttering. In the hallway, her heart was still pounding because of him. Just 2 weeks ago, Chloe was very sure of her judgments about the Duke, a cold and ruthless person. I thought he was a rude, arrogant, and selfish man. He has been that way since the first meeting. So why is my hatred for him gradually fading? Chloe hesitated to return to the room that had rejected her. I thought those initial feelings had completely disappeared. What I want to say to him today is not gratitude. When the door opened, the young man was already waiting for her. Inside, Chloe screamed, Damien, I don't hate you. She let go of the empty cane and threw herself into the Duke's arms. Even he was surprised by her action. The floor was littered with their clothes. Damien passionately caressed her skin in burning desire. Chloe whispered, Your Grace, I don't hate you. It seemed all her preconceived notions about Damien were completely wrong. Her feelings at this moment overshadowed her previous rational judgment. But is the truth behind what she is witnessing? Damien's face blushed in infatuation. He looked straight into those amber eyes and silently lamented, Chloe, you are so unlucky. Returning to the early morning of the incident, the Duke had quickly learned that Marquis Isabella had passed away. This was no different than a fuse ignited by the royal family to declare war on him. Although the maid brought by the Marquis from the royal palace was the culprit, Count Wise was still troubled because there was no evidence to prove it. Damien coldly replied, If there is no evidence, then we must create it. Go see the doctor immediately. Let's stage a play that the royal family planted a spy as the Duke's mistress only to kill her when she was no longer useful. The Emperor went through great lengths to set up this play. We should respond appropriately. Suddenly, he saw someone rushing back to the mansion. That cloak. She was with that servant. A feeling of jealous irritation began to stir in him. Chloe Verdier, what on earth must I do to make you? Damien turned to his confidant and asked, Lord Wise, remind me why you swore loyalty to me. The Count replied, To show gratitude because you saved my life on the battlefield. The Duke wickedly smiled. I saved your life. Do you think a woman would feel indebted for the same reason? It's time to change the plan. Go to the Duchess's room and place this poison vial in her bag. Season 1 ends here. Stay tuned for Season 2 with more exciting developments of Betrayal of Dignity. Remember to like and subscribe to follow the next part this Saturday.